The Sam Sorbo Show is brought to you in partnership by the Herzog Foundation.
Hi there. My guest today was actually called to fight for your parental rights. He's a dedicated dad and a husband. He's also on the front lines in Tallahassee defending your freedom to choose how your kids are educated with zero government interference. And he's got an impressive 40-year legacy. He's leading now the homeschool movement into the future. This is an episode of the Sam Sorbo Show you won't want to miss. Here we go.
Sam Sorbo,
Sam, welcome back to the program.
I'm glad to welcome Sam Sorbo.
It's great to have you here.
Well, welcome to the Sam Sorbo Show, and I'm very excited to talk to this guest for this episode. I think you'll learn a lot about the history and the future for homeschooling. Before I do, I am asked to read one of my new 5-star reviews from Nehemiah Dan. He says this: Sam is a rare voice, articulate, highly relevant, bold, and God-fearing. And then he adds this part: maybe in DC someday? Are you trying to curse me, Dan? Come on, please don't do that. All right, moving on. But thank you very much for that review. I really appreciate it. So today's guest is the new lobbyist. He's Chief Communications Officer for the Home Education Foundation. And that organization has been fighting for parental rights in education at the Florida Capitol for over 40 years. Mentored by their founder, which was Brenda Dickinson, I should say. He then stepped into the leadership role with his own bold vision. And he's rebranding the organization. He's expanding its public voice. He's taking the fight for educational freedom into the future. Please welcome my guest, Jason Crawford. Welcome to the program.
Hello. Thank you. Thank you. What an introduction.
Hey, I just read the stuff. No, I'm kidding. Actually, by way of introduction, I will say to people that, you and I met a while ago, but recently we both appeared on a panel for Diseño something in Spanish, yes. Education by Design. Educa por Diseño. And not being much of a Spanish native speaker myself. That was interesting because we had to speak like 2 sentences and then shut up and let them translate. We had a fabulous translator, although I did catch her once not finishing the message. But it was such a great discussion. And yeah. I have to say, I really appreciate both your point of view and, of course, your voice in all of this. And I just wanted to start at a particular point because I've been working on Parents Demanding Justice Alliance, which is a group of parents that has coalesced because they were targeted by their school boards. They spoke at their school boards. They exercised their First Amendment right, freedom of speech. The speech was not violent, although some people think that you can say that words are violent, even though they demonstrably are not violent.
That hurts my feelings.
Right. And one of the parents recently spoke at a school board meeting, and he was escorted out by police. So I got him on the phone because he has a little boy. And I think I've succeeded in talking him into homeschooling.
Is this here in Florida?
Here in Florida.
I know what you're talking about.
He wondered if it actually, how does he comply with schooling? And I said, okay, what is schooling? What do you mean comply? He literally did not know that homeschooling means you get to do whatever you want within, there are vague parameters put on it.
Sure.
But basically, as long as you're not committing child abuse, it's cool. And that's because children learn differently. And so there's really no way to, look, they're going to try to codify and put boundaries and, other kinds of parameters and legal restrictions or whatever on homeschoolers. But it's very, very difficult to do, and they haven't been able to do it yet. And so I just walked him through, what it might look like. He thought, because he takes his little kid to work with him. Okay. Because he's a good little kid and he just goes to work, and he's a contract worker. And so he goes to people's homes and he does he does contract work, and, he's a service provider. And he said I wouldn't be able to do the schooling with him. And I'm like, what schooling? Sorry. It's like,
Oh, it's great. It's great.
so why don't you start there? Because
Sure.
we almost got into this discussion before I brought you into the show. This idea
Yeah.
that parents have no idea
Hmm.
what their rights are.
Certainly. It's a great question. I hear it all the time from parents, just like the one that you've spoken about. And it's always a shock to them when they realize that they're in it for the education, not for school.
So they don't understand. What I just heard you
Mhm.
say is they really don't understand the difference between education and school. And there's a vast difference.
Yeah, and I don't mean that to sound like I'm putting anyone down or preaching to anyone, but it's a very important nuance. I think semantics are important. I really do. And a lot of people say, "Oh, that's just semantics," but the semantics and the details of the language are where it lives. I think that my background is in licensed mental health counseling, and when I talk with people, language is everything. The language that constructs,
It's true.
yeah, it's your relationship with your husband or wife. It's your relationship with your children. It's the relationship we have with God. It's the relationship. It's how we relate to everything in the world and come to know it
Well, I
is
wrote a book
what's
called
going on.
Words for Warriors
I know I have it.
because we are changing the definitions of our terms, right? And
Hmm.
that's a speech and debate sort of phrase, define your
It is
terms. But it
correct.
is, and we don't really cover that in school because school is not education. So where you're trying to, I don't know, be amenable and, sound reasonable, I'm much
Hmm.
less so. I think that school does not educate. It does the opposite,
Mm.
in fact. And so I make a very firm distinction between schooling and education. And so that's what I tried to provide for him. But
Hmm.
I'm sure that you talk with a lot of people who
Sure.
think that they need to download whatever the curricula is in the school in order
Hmm.
to accomplish education, right?
Certainly, and the subtle encroachment of that concept isn't just on the parents. It's pervasive through the staff, the teachers, the principals, the board of directors, the superintendents. It that mindset is the default mindset that it must be school. The school's the only way people know how to learn anymore. It has to be. It has to look something like school. And if you don't, like, what does that even mean? How do you even trust the results? I'm like, well, I guess all of human history where children belonged to their parents and they raised them, just throw that out
They
because the
were
only
such
history that
idiots
matters.
back then.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
They knew
yeah.
nothing.
They couldn't build pyramids or any of that stuff. Like, what did they know, right?
No, it's true. The founders were all homeschooled. They were all
Yeah,
self-taught. And this is where I think it really sort of runs off the rails is this idea
right.
that a child might be self-taught, might actually be able to
Imagine that.
teach him or herself is so foreign to
Mhm.
to everyone. But you touched on something else just now. Um, I don't know if you intended to do this because you said that that school of thought is pervasive and it goes sort of all the way up. So we're talking
Yes.
school board, right? But it's
Hmm.
worse than that because not only do they think that they are the repository of all things educational, but they've now approached this from the standpoint that parents are useless in this conversation, right?
Yeah, I mean it's just grown like kudzu. It's just taken over everything, and it as a mindset. And I try not to explain with malice what's easily explained with ignorance because that there's a
Sure.
bit. Sometimes someone jumps into a new role with the district or something to that effect, and by default, 96% of the population is still doing some form of school, public or private, right?
Right. And they
You
don't know
have
what they
about
don't know.
Right. So there is a massive gap that's just ignorance. But when the gap is so big of ignorance, and then somebody goes, "Well, why do we let people even do this anyway? This creates more work for me, or I have to do this, and now I've got to fill out all this paperwork. Where's the funding for this coming from?" And there's just all of these complaints that start to get thrown on. This is so onerous. Why do we even allow this to happen? Everybody should be in school anyway. And now the default that pervasive mindset clicks over into an ought, into a should. And that's where the violation of rights starts to creep in, because these are these oughts that become mandatory that you must do. And that's where we push back really hard.
Yeah, so that's HEF, and
Mhm.
we got the website going up on the screen for people so that
Hey.
they can understand that. So he did not know his rights, going back to this
Mhm.
parent that I was just talking to, and I said to him, "All you need to do is file a letter of intent. You mail it in, a letter of intent to your, I can't remember exactly where, your local school or
Your
something,
district. Yep.
your district, and, but I think I heard you say that that's actually not legally required. Is that true?" Thanks for tuning into the Sam Sorbo Show. You know, we are in a battle for our very nation, a nation that was founded on Christian principles and on the Bible. The Ten Commandments is the basis for our rule of law. But these days, when you go talk to people on the street, you'll find that most of them don't even know what rule of law means. And that's why I'm so proud to have Herzog Foundation as a sponsor of my show. I also love what they do because they seek for the benefit of Christian education throughout the nation. So Herzog Foundation is a wonderful partner for us here at the Sam Sorbo Show. Thanks for watching. Discover the wonders of biblical history with Biblical Excavations by David Nekrutman. Teach teens to love the Bible, defend their faith, and know God more deeply with a unique collection of educational resources that bring the ancient world of the Bible to life. Visit biblicalexcavations.com/curriculum and use code SAM to get 10% off your next purchase. Dive into God's Word and enrich your homeschooling journey today. Protect your family from harmful and explicit content online with Canopy, the only solution that filters and monitors in real time. With Canopy, you can rest easy knowing your children are browsing safely and securely. Visit canopy.us and use code SAM20 to get 20% lifetime discount on any subscription. Keep your loved ones safe online with Canopy today. So he did not know his rights, going back to this
Mhm.
parent that I was just talking to, and I said to him, "All you need to do is file a letter of intent. You mail it in, a letter of intent to your, I can't remember exactly where, your local school or
Your
something,
district. Yep.
your district, and, but I think I heard you say that that's actually not legally required. Is that true?"
No. Well, so the statute, you can declare that you've started your home education program. The letter of intent isn't a slip of paper that allows the district to give you permission to homeschool. It's simply a record that you've declared your intent to have a home education program. And it's required to be on file within 30 days of starting your home education program. So you go ahead and start your home education program when you're ready. Within 30 days of that, you send in the letter of intent. And there's a interesting little nuance there where how does anybody know you've started? Well, they don't. You know, when your child ages
Right.
in, nobody has a record of how old they are and how where they're supposed to be and that they're in attendance. It's really a matter of back in the day when Brenda Dickinson and Craig Dickinson and Daniel Webster sat together and started writing the bill that would become home education law. They were fighting against, I mean, Karens existed before the internet, but there were a lot of people who would turn you in and say, "Hey, I see their kids running around the yards, like they're not in school.
They
They
should be
should
in
be in
school, yeah.
school." hmm And so it was a matter of saying, having something on file. Oh no, we're homeschooling. Well, how does anybody know? Well, there's that. But the way that they worded it was so careful, that it's not a matter of allowing to permit or not permit parents to make
Right,
that choice. And
right.
that's so key. And so ultimately what would happen is, you know, you didn't really have to send one in until somebody said something and the truancy officer shows up, and then you say, "Oh, well, we started our home education program," and you have 30 days within that to turn it in. So it's actually a lot more
Yeah,
technically loose than people
right.
realize.
So, and but it is a bit of semantics
Mhm.
because are children not required to attend some form of education at a certain age?
So they are.
Like if I have a
There is.
12-year-old,
Mhm.
I can't say I can't keep them home from school and not file and
Mhm.
say, well, we just decided not to do school this year
This just
until,
gets into the nuance of who knows. Like, how does anyone know? Like, if
right.
you are completely off the grid and you're not doing anything and no one
No,
knows
that's
that you
great.
have a student that's 12 years old, they don't know that they have to be in or be counted or not
And
counted.
they don't know if they are in or if they're not in or
Correct.
whatever. And you can say anything you want, obviously. You can say I
Right.
homeschool, and they probably won't go to the district and say, hey, has she filed her letter of intent? But parents are scared
They are.
because we've been cudgeled into
Mhm.
obeying the law and not being outside the law, and you don't want to bring the wrath of the school board on you
Sure.
unless you're
Yeah,
one of
yeah,
those
yeah.
people
Well,
who
they aren't the
speak.
law, but yes. Yeah.
And so you file. So you just send the letter in and you filed, and then you're in compliance, and nobody literally has any right to say anything about you. And in the great state of Florida,
Correct.
similar to in California, I believe they can't ask you anything about what you do for school, what the grades are, how the testing is going. They can't
Sure.
ask you anything. The only thing they can ask you in California is for attendance records. You have to keep attendance records.
Mm. You don't
But
in Florida.
I don't think they even have that in Florida, right?
So in Florida, in the statutes, it's 1002.41. They're actually exempt from the public school day-to-day attendance requirements uh, because the question is, where does your education happen? And as every tried and true homeschooler knows, everywhere is the answer. In the car on the way here, we have a breakdown over there when we're doing teachable moments on character and math, and you know it happens everywhere. And so when are you in attendance and when are you not? It's very nebulous. So there is a line in that statute that states that they're exempt from the same standards of full days attendance. The enrollment and the letter of intent is what satisfies that. And then there's a beginning to it. And then there's an annual evaluation that the parent does each year, which they simply need to, by law, show that the student has made progress commensurate with their level. And so that was also a very intentional piece that was added to the statute because this whole school mindset that here's first grade, here's second grade, here's third grade, here's what they're learning, they have to be on this, there's a benchmark, there's that, there's all these standards. Your child may be reading 12th grade level and they're in fourth grade, but they may be reading on a 12th grade level and they may be blowing through everything that you put in front of them, and their math may be fourth grade, and they're just going to be all over the place. So the
Mhm.
goal isn't to slow a child down and make sure they're only fourth grade or speed them up and put them in some
God
hyper intense
forbid.
program. It's just to make sure they're showing progress, that they
Which is
can learn at their pace.
Yeah, this is brilliant. Now,
Mhm.
you have the opt-in to test,
Correct.
in Florida. And so
Yes.
it's an option if you wanted to just take the standardized have your child take the standardized tests. But I always
Correct.
opted for the assessment, which is done with an accredited assessor.
Yep.
And she just interviews your child, asks them about their work that they've done during the year. My
Mhm.
daughter used to get super nervous because she's like a rule follower, and
Yeah,
so she would get super nervous, and then
I have
everything
one
would
of
be
those.
fine.
Yep.
And so it is fairly lax.
It is.
By any standards, it's fairly lax because Florida believes in honoring the parents and
Yes.
trusting the parents, right? And I think that
Correct.
that's what we're seeing from these school boards is there's no trust.
Mhm.
They know, and not only do
For
they not
sure.
trust the parents, they hate the parents, it seems, so much.
There is a hostility that does exist, and I think part of that comes down to money. They view the way that the funding works in Florida is that if for a home education student that is not they're enrolled with the county, but they're not showing up at public school, their butt is not in a seat, and so they are not counted as the head count, then the schools don't get to draw down funds for those students. And so there's a little bit of a motivational factor that says, we have to take care of you, but we don't get anything for doing it. And that, there's a lot of bloat in the budget. So I don't know that they have a leg to stand on when it comes to that. but that's definitely, a part of the background sentiment that I think is there. And right now, shout out to our new commissioner of education, Stasi is doing an absolutely fantastic job holding the line for parents and putting parents up and setting them up as the authority and deferring to parents. It's very different than the way I grew up. I started homeschooling around like eighth grade. My mom told me it was weird for a lot of people, and they all looked at us like we were crazy and had five heads. And at that time, it was not quite as normal. It's a little bit more normal now, but we actually have in our current situation in Florida, we actually have a very pro parent and parent first leadership, and that it matters a lot. It matters a lot because the way the conversations are handled behind the scenes when you're working with this college, and this college will say something, and they want any reason sometimes to get rid of a homeschool student out of their, I don't know why. They get the funding and the student does pretty well. By all measurements, homeschool students actually do really well in
Colleges
college.
get funding for homeschool students?
Yeah, when they pay their tuition. Yeah.
Oh,
So like when they graduate and they go to college,
right. It's
they
weird. It's weird. I agree with
it's
you that,
very odd.
college is like, that's the big ruse, is that people think, oh, I'm never going to get into college. If you have money, you'll get into college. Like, you just need to pay them the money. They will take you and they'll graduate you probably. Like, they
Yeah,
might make you pay more, but
sure.
it's crazy what they're graduating today and calling a
Yes.
degree, a degreed
Yes.
individual or whatever.
Yeah.
All the wheels have fallen off the school bus in this case. Like,
Oh, yeah.
it's so bad now. But let's
It's
go
very
back
bad.
a little bit,
Go
because
ahead.
how long have you been doing HEF? Because you took over for the founder. And so
Mhm.
describe her. How did you get involved? And, what was that like?
Man. So I'm just a dirty little white boy from Alabama, and I moved down here for college and got married and got stuck. I actually hate the Florida weather. So it's always been a bit of, I don't like sand and I don't like it when it's really hot. I like the four seasons. But we got stuck here anyway, and I I was always intent on homeschooling. And so when I introduced that to my wife, she was like, "What do you mean and why?" And we had that whole conversation. She was a Bright Futures recipient, like head of the class, very, very smart, got full ride scholarship and all of that because Florida has a lot of great laws. And I'm from Alabama and we didn't have those. So um, as our kids start to age up and we start working with them on homeschooling, um, my wife took over running a home education instructional program, which is kind of like a co op when they get pretty big.
Hi there. After my family and I started homeschooling, not long after, I decided to plan a trip to Washington, D.C. and the surrounding area. And we went with another family, and my kids had a blast. We visited all over D.C. I ran them ragged, but we had such a great time. And it's a trip that I really want other homeschool families to be able to enjoy. So I've organized a trip from April 12th to April 18th of 2026 just for homeschool families. And we will be seeing some amazing sites. We'll go to Ford's Theater, where the Lincoln assassination took place. We'll go to the Spy Museum. We're going to see, of course, all the memorials. We will see some government buildings. Also, Mount Vernon is one of my favorite places where George Washington made his home, and the National Zoo, the Museum of the Bible, the Smithsonian, and also Arlington Cemetery. So please join me. This is one of the best things you can do as an American homeschool family. But even if you're coming from abroad, you're more than welcome. I hope to see you there. Give your friend the very best with farm to pet dog treats made from 100% single human grade ingredients. These treats never include byproducts, binders, fillers, additives, preservatives, or artificial ingredients. Just pure, wholesome goodness. Visit farmtopettreats.com and use code SAMSORBO to get 25% off your next order. Treat your dog to healthy, delicious snacks they will love today. Born from an unwavering passion for health, truth, and freedom, Rebel Lion teamed up with the world's leading medicinal chemists to form Fierce Immunity. This groundbreaking formula isn't just an immune booster, it's a declaration of independence to your health. Fierce Immunity is GMP certified, made in the USA, non-GMO, gluten-free, and third-party tested, backed by the Rebel Lion commitment to community, health, and truth. Strengthen your defenses, supercharge your energy, and embrace your inner lion. Visit Get Fierce now and use code SAM to get 15% off your order, because real freedom begins with fierce health. Hey there, if you're enjoying today's episode, take a moment, leave me a 5-star review, please. This is the way that people will be able to discover these conversations. And by the way, I will be reading some of these reviews on air. So whether yours is poignant or humorous or simply thoughtful, take a moment, leave me the review, and maybe yours will be the one that is chosen to read on air and share with the world. Thanks so much. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and all of that good stuff. I appreciate you.
My wife took over running a home education instructional program, which is kind of like a co-op when they get pretty big. And the woman who runs that program knew Brenda and would talk with Brenda a lot and would talk about the history of, home education in Florida and how the laws are so great and why. And it kind of went in one ear and out the other because I'm a busy dad, and I'm like, yeah, sure. But, I was building a company doing marketing services. And one day the director of the program, she called me and she says, you need to help Brenda. And I said, okay, send her my way. Like, let me see what I can do. And so I start trying to squeeze her into my busy schedule and juggle things. And I looked at her website, and it's a WordPress website where text was over text, and I couldn't read any of it. And I'm thought, how do you get the word out about anything? What have you got going on? And so I sat with her and started interviewing her to tell me the history, tell me who HEF is, and tell me what you've been doing, and tell
Because
me
you couldn't
why.
read it on the website.
Because you couldn't. No, you couldn't. You couldn't. And I spent like weeks and weeks and weeks with her gathering this information, and I realized she's a gem. She is an absolute godsend that there's been no funding historically. I mean, there's been some here or there as parents would give to her, but she has somehow managed by just doing it as a passion project.
Yeah.
And pouring her life into it. This is who she is. And as I realized she's trying to pass the torch, I thought, Brenda, there's has to be done by someone who feels the same way. Like, this is a must. If we hire we managed to somehow in a miracle in the first year raise some 6-figure income that we could attract one of the mercenary lobbyists to come in. How do we then, when, if the funding stops or the economy dips, how do we ensure the parents' rights are still protected? And there's a person there being the voice of them in the Capitol. And she looks at me and she goes, are you volunteering? I was like, I don't know. So I talked to my wife after that conversation. And I said, I would do it, I think. I would move, but I don't know how we would make the move. And we're like, our budget was stretched totally thin. We had nothing extra.
So
and we
you
were
have to
locked
move to
in.
Tallahassee from where?
Tampa.
So,
From
and
Tampa.
that's what, a 4-hour drive?
Roughly. Yeah.
Yeah. So you can't be commuting. Like that's too
There's
much.
no commute.
You're going to have to pick up sticks and move. Okay.
Yeah. And I have to live here because being here, there were days where within 10 minutes I have to be at the Capitol in this meeting and that meeting, and stuff happens quickly during session. But so I told my wife, I was like, unless you know someone who has, a bunch of homes laying around and they don't need one, and we could move in for a while and then figure stuff out. And, unless you just know somebody like that, I don't know, feels impossible. I'm willing, but it feels impossible. That was June of 2023. And 6 months later, in November, I get a call that said exactly that. I hear that you've been wanting to work with Brenda and you're contemplating moving. We just had tenants move out unexpectedly, and we can forego the rent for a couple of months if that would help you move up and get in. And I get chills bump still every time I think about it.
Sure.
because it's almost as if God was like,
That's what it
you
was.
said it was impossible,
Right.
and I did it, but now will you keep what you said you would
That's
do
right.
if it wasn't?
That's
Yeah.
right. You set the parameters, so I meet you. Now,
Mhm.
your move, your move.
Your move. Yeah, and I said yes, and
You gonna
immediately
mess
we
with
were
me or what? Like,
yes. Well, January, we were in Tallahassee, moved up,
yeah,
and it was
wow.
I just said yes, and we came, so
So is that 2024?
that was 2024.
Okay, so a
Yeah.
year and a half ago. You haven't
Yes.
actually. Oh
Yeah.
my gosh, so I
I've
must
been
have met
working
you
with
right
her for
when you
2
took
years.
over.
Mhm. Yeah, we
Yeah,
started crossing paths right then, because I was trying to
exactly.
amp up where we're at and,
Well, it's
our
funny because
visibility and
I was wondering why I didn't know you, and then now it makes sense. So
I
I
wasn't
met
there to be known.
right, I met Jason at a homeschool conference that's
Mhm.
local here in Palm Beach, and the first time I met you, I was like, "Why didn't I know that you exist?" And now we have
Yeah,
discovered the truth behind all of this.
this is why.
Um,
Yeah.
so would you say that Florida is a leader in the home education movement? Would you go that far?
I would, and I would say that because in 1845, when public schooling became mandatory attendance, what happens in statute when you spell out that something, it goes from being an important idea to being statutorily required, it then all other options then become unlawful. So then there's work to get now that public school is the way, there's got to be work to make sure that other ways are also made legal. And so Pierce versus Society of Sisters comes along, and in Pierce versus Society of Sisters coming along, it says, oh well, the child is not merely a creature of the state; they belong to their parents, and so private schooling it should also be something they can choose. And
And
so then
what
private
year was that?
that was 1920. Yeah, it's in the 1920s.
Close enough,
I
close enough.
think it's close to 25. Um, the when that happened, and this is kind of where the moniker homeschooling, I think, emerged because it's like, oh, well, we started our private school and we school at home with our kid. That's how we do it. And so that became a way of doing it. But still, the private school is the entity authorized to educate your children. So, Florida, what Brenda did in Florida, is she looked at it and said, parents should directly have a spelled out right that they can teach their own children, and they should be able to do it in the home. They should be able to educate their own children in the home. And for that, she called it home education. That's why it's one of the ways of establishing attendance in Florida. It's unique to a lot of other states where they'll call it homeschooling, and it's still playing that semantic game of rolling off of the trend of schooling being the primary forte that leads the tip of the spear, and not education itself. And so it's nuanced and it's subtle. It's probably something that a lot of people take for granted,
Yeah.
but I think it's critical. I think it's critical.
So in the state of California, because that's where I did most of my homeschooling, you file a form, you fill out there's a specific form that you fill out online and
Okay.
then you send it in, and it includes the name of your private school. So you create
Right.
a private school because you are schooling your children yourself,
Right.
ostensibly at home. And so I created a school, and that's how we got that done. And by the way, like,
Yes.
they come on to you in California, they have groups, homeschool groups that are like, this is how you fill out the form. When they ask this, only say this. Don't say
Hmm.
anything else.
Yeah.
Because they want no intrusion. They want the minimal amount of intrusion. And
Yes.
so if you answer like an open-ended question with too much information,
Right.
then that might set some sort of precedent. It might open the door to,
Oh, it does.
and in California, they outlawed homeschool for like 3 months.
Mm,
And there was such an uproar, it wouldn't stand. So they took
wow.
that away. But that was when was that? The early 2000s, I think.
Wow. Yeah.
Because
They.
I was around for it, but I think I wasn't homeschooling then yet or
Okay.
something. Anyway, it didn't last. So we're blessed that way. But it is, I think it's so good of you to point out how careful Brenda was
Hmm.
with understanding the nuance and preserving parental rights, which now are under attack.
Hmm.
So in the state of Illinois, they have a bill that they're considering that would
Yes.
require any homeschool parent to have a college degree.
Hmm.
Never mind that in the state of New Jersey, they actually don't require you to pass basic competency tests to become a teacher in a
Hmm.
school. Like, it's so odd to me. And of course, this is federalism. This is what we actually want. We want the states to pursue different avenues so that we can sort of contrast and compare and see
Right.
whose way works the best.
Right.
Are you fearful of that in the state of Florida? Do you have those kinds of qualms or others in terms of parental rights?
Yeah, my concerns come from a different angle, but because Florida's pretty well spelled out in terms of parents' rights, parents first, the Parents' Bill of Rights. Those are some pretty clear. Those are some pretty clear distinctions that give the parent a codified authority to stand on when it comes to arguing. That, oh, you're encroaching here. There is, I believe, I can't remember the exact number of the bill in my head. The numbers get switched, but I think it was 2817 or 2718 was the
I'm not
Illinois
going to
bill.
correct you.
That I can't remember. I know those all four of those numbers were in it, but but it was that they were also being told that was the Department of Children and Families could come in and review their curriculum and what they're doing and
Mm,
approve or disapprove of it. That is not so in the state of Florida. The way that it's drafted and the way that the statutes are set up. Now, that doesn't mean it can't happen. Everything that's in writing is subject to change. Everything that's there can be voted on and changed. And I think that is where the issue of we are so far down the road from 1776 that we have forgotten how our rights have to be fought for. Like, truly, people bled and died for. And it can't be something we take lightly or for granted too much because we're busy. We got a lot going on, soccer practice. We got to get here. We got to get there. There's so much going on. We don't have a lot to think about. We don't even go shop anymore. We have everything delivered to our front door. So that, even that helps us save time because we're so busy and plugged in everywhere. And
right.
we don't give a thought to something until we're told we can't do it. Right. And at that point, it's too late. Usually there's something that allowed them to make that statement or to hold that line or to tell the parent they had to do this. And now the parent's scratching their head going, I thought we lived in the United States of America, the home of the free. Like, what do you mean I can't do this? And so making sure that those statutes stay written well, written for parents, that parents stay empowered, even amidst all the poor choices people make. It's not illegal to be stupid. That's something that a lawyer friend of mine tells me all the time. I'm like, I ask him, I'm like, Paul, can people do this? And he goes, yeah, man, it's not illegal to be dumb. And I'm like, whoa, you're right. You're totally right. What the law states is the law. And if we're free, we should be free to succeed and excel and free to self-determine in the opposite direction as well.
Yeah.
Self-governance is truly ours.
Stay ahead of the storm with IQ Weather, a premium all-video homeschool course that makes learning science exciting and engaging. This vivid, entertaining program incorporates physics, chemistry, geography, geology, astronomy, and oceanography, giving your kids a well-rounded education in the fascinating world of weather. Designed to captivate young minds, IQ Weather makes complex concepts easy to understand and fun to explore. Visit iqweather.com and use code SAM to get 15% off your order. Give your kids a science education they'll love and stay prepared for anything. Start your IQ Weather journey today. Spark curiosity and inspire discovery with Light Lab by Suzanne Schera. This hands-on, engaging curriculum brings science and faith together, exploring topics like energy, light, and the wonders of God's creation. Perfect for homeschooling families, Light Lab helps kids discover and develop a deeper understanding of science while growing their faith. Visit lightlabetc.com and use code SAM10 to get 10% off your order. Illuminate your child's education with Light Lab today. Unlock a world of career possibilities with Praxis. a transformative program designed to help teens skip traditional college and start building a successful career right away. Praxis connects young people with real-world job opportunities, mentorship, and hands-on experience in fields like marketing, sales, and business development. Their teen course equips students with the skills they need to thrive in today's competitive workforce. Visit discoverpraxis.com/teen-course and use code SAM15 to get 15% off the teen course. Don't wait for a degree to start your career. Take the first step today with Praxis. Florida's recently, in the past couple years, adopted this school choice funding model,
Right.
the PEP scholarship program, and things like that. And I've heard that if you take the money, you are no longer considered a homeschool student in the state of Florida, because once you take the money, you are a government schooled student because you're getting money from the government.
Okay.
What do you make of that?
So I think it's more nuanced than a headline will do its service. The state budget's funding that comes down directly and goes to the districts that they use that tax money and then serve the public in that way is
I thought,
not
but I thought it wasn't tax money. I thought it was
right.
contributions from businesses.
That's what I'm getting to. Yes,
Oh, okay.
that's not how the personalized education program
Oh, I see. You're
works.
differentiating from the schools
Yes.
to the, yeah, yeah. Okay, go
Yes,
ahead.
and so there is a subtle difference. The money doesn't come, and this is what the schools are really up in arms about. Like, oh, you're taking money out of the school system. That media is running with that, but they're not, because if you're a home education student, they were not going to get funding for you anyway.
Right.
So if they're not getting funding for you anyway, and then you have access to a scholarship over here that's alternatively funded, I mean, that's pretty open. That's as close I think as we can get if we're throwing at a dartboard to them saying, "Hey, you pay your taxes and we use them to fund public education and you don't see any of that. If you think you can do a better job, would you like to run an experiment?" That's as close as we can get to throwing a dart at a dartboard and getting just our tax money back at this point. And so
Even though it's not our tax money.
right.
Right.
Well,
Okay.
in a perfect world, I would say that home education families become tax exempt for that, and they don't have to contribute to the public
Oh, in a
education.
perfect world, sure. I
Sure.
think you and I, yeah, we've established that we basically agree on that. Like, let's just
Sure.
offer families a
Yeah.
credit because they have children that they have to school somehow. But here's the
And
problem with,
potentially we could work there, but we don't live in that world right now.
yeah,
And we do
we
live
can
in the
dream.
world where there's like tons of exorbitant spending happening in the public education system. And then the legislature in Florida saw fit to create an alternative scholarship program that's funded out of corporate tax breaks that corporations get by funding into a scholarship funding organization,
Right,
and
but what
then they
happens,
administer.
you got to explain to me,
Mhm,
if the children are going to not go to school, so the schools won't tap into the tax money,
mhm.
what happens to the tax money?
You're saying if the schools won't tap into the tax money.
So there are 2 students,
Mhm,
they're both covered with the tax money.
right.
One of them only goes to school. So
Mhm,
they take $10,000 from the $20,000 of tax money to school them. The other student gets funded privately, basically through the Florida scholarship program, but it's private money in a sense.
mhm.
Even though it goes through the government still considers its own money, but
Yes.
it's not tax money, right? So there's
Mhm.
$10,000 of tax money that's just sitting there.
So that's how well, there isn't, but it
But
would
there
make
is.
sense. It would make sense that there is, but the
They
way
have
that they
taxed
justify.
according to budgeting for that many students.
Right, but the way that they administer it, there's so much other administration fees and areas at which funding can be applied. So it goes into the pool of money and then is then used in the districts. Yeah. Yeah. This is
Sorry,
why the argument
that's
the
not
ar-
how economics works.
right. Well, this is
Um,
why arguing it with them is so challenging because
yes.
because at every step of the way there's not a transparent one for one that you're saying, well, here's a one and here's a one and they should match up, but it doesn't actually play out that way.
I
And
know
that's
how checkbooks work.
yes,
Even though I went
yes,
to
you
public
do.
school, I watched a YouTube video, so now I know. So
Yes.
listen, so in the
Yeah.
state of Arizona, I
Uh-huh.
just saw these figures come out, and they spend now 23% more because fewer children are going to school.
Yeah, that math makes sense. That maths up, doesn't it? It's
See,
wild.
that's
It's
my
wild.
problem with the whole school choice program. And I know that
Mhm.
in Florida, it's a bit of a shell game because no, it's not taxpayer funded, so it's okay. But they also sold us on no strings attached, which is just fiscal irresponsibility. So that makes zero
That would
sense.
be correct.
But
Yeah.
regardless, in none of these programs have I seen them say, and the tax savings will be.
Mm,
They don't. There's nowhere that
yeah.
school choice is in any way, shape, or form cutting budgets. And
Mhm.
that's the problem because the money that the children get is not commensurate with the money that the schools would otherwise get. It's
Mhm.
not. It's half.
No. Yeah.
It's half what the
Yeah.
schools otherwise get. So in
Yeah.
Florida, you get $8,000, but the cost to a student in Florida is like 16. So
Mhm.
it's not
So, yeah,
even
it's
right.
not a one for one, and you're dead onto something, and that's the part that becomes nebulous and difficult to parse out. And oh, we need how many charts and flow charts to see this and where that money went, and how much money is set aside for positions that no one's filling because we hope to get it filled, but we can't get it filled because it's sitting aside at that salary cap, and no one wants the job at that level. And so there's a lot. There's
You've
a
been in
lot.
Tallahassee too long.
Mhm. Yeah, I sure have. I've listened to too many committee meetings too. And I enjoy it, oddly enough.
Well, that's good. That's good. Somebody has to. And I'm glad that you're there. And obviously this isn't your nut to crack. So I know that we kind of segued over this way, and I'm not sure how that happened. Let's
Well, let
talk
me
again. Let's just revisit the Home Education Foundation, or HEF, and in this
sure.
case, flhef.com. What's your
Org.
vision?
.org, sorry.
Sorry, .org. Yes, of course. What's your vision, and how do you see achieving that? And what do you need us to do to help support you?
I appreciate that. So I will say that as far as pivoting these two conversations together, our stance in this whole thing is to make sure that parents' rights are spelled out and that as much as possible we keep all of these programs from encroaching in the small nuanced encroachments. We watch the lettering of the law, the words. We look. There's so many different statute areas that we comb over, and 70 education bills this past session, among all the many others that touch things like Department of Transportation bills that talk about new requirements for students who are going to become licensed learners, driver's license learners, and what courses they'll need, and how does that impact home education, even though it's not an educational bill. And so there's a lot that we do, that we look over, and
Mhm.
our main bent is always the same. The parents, the children are not the creature of the state. They're your children, and you should have authority over all of their educational choices. Period. Whether you're in a scholarship program or not, you should have the direct authority over their choices. And so we push that as much as possible when people are not even talking about statutory requirements, but behind the scene policies. Okay, that's what the statute says. Now, how do we do this? We consult with them, the scholarship funding organizations, to make sure that they're being as parent first as possible. That we're pushing. No, this is not how we do it in the homeschooling world. This is how we do it, and we have all of this freedom. And the small little rule that you're trying to put together because that's your fiscal year and timeline shouldn't be the problem of the parents to bear. You figured that out. This is what we have the freedom over our curriculum choices, or et cetera. And so we have lots of conversations that we're constantly a part of to try to help push back constantly on the subtle encroachments. And that's ultimately where we live and stand and breathe. And that's my full time. One of my full time jobs. We're not fully funded yet, so from where Brenda was to where I have kind of come in and taking over it, I would love to build so much more. I would love to see street debate sponsored by HEF, where we pull in young people and give them prompts that are being thrown at us from the districts and let them,
Like
argue and
what?
debate. Well, so one of the issues that we faced this past year with Senate Bill 248 was that we were being told home education students couldn't play at this school or that school because it was at capacity. The truth is that the Constitution in the state of Florida under education, when the capacity was created, it actually specifically states that it doesn't apply to extracurriculars. But when they were closing schools off for core curricula, they were closing off the extracurriculars at the same time because they just remove it from the portal. So that's a subtle nuance that no one really pays attention to, but we had eyes on it. And they were using that as a loophole to just deny home education students playing sports anywhere. And so that was what we got involved in and pushed back on. And it's little things like that that I would love to give to young people and say, okay, here's the Constitution language that's pertinent. Here are the sets of statutes that all come into play. Here's the prompt. Here's what they're saying. Is it true? Is it not true? How would you argue back? What would you do? How would you formulate a good argument? Here's argument, which is logic, and here's rhetoric, which is be persuasive and try to win people over, which is totally different than just having all the right logic that matches
It's
up.
different than being right.
Yeah, that's right. Yes,
I
correct.
think Trump was doing something for allowing all homeschooled students to participate in school sports.
Yeah, I
There was
think
some,
it's become more popular now. It
yeah,
really has, across the board. And I think I want to say that Florida was the first to actually do it, which is interesting because they're calling it the Tim Tebow laws like everywhere else, but he was able to do it because of the groundwork that Brenda had laid here in Florida early on, Brenda and Craig. They actually named that statute the Craig Dickinson Act. So it's actually named after her husband when he passed away in the mid 90s. So
wow.
yeah, it was really it's a legacy. And I want all home education families in Florida to know their legacy and their roots, how it was fought for. That's one of the reasons why we
Right.
do our podcast and why we put out the information that we do, because if we lose sight of that, what it takes to maintain it, the importance of being vigilant on it. I mean, maybe my kids are graduated. Mine aren't personally, but maybe someone looks at it and they go, "Oh, my kids have graduated." But in 10 years or 14 years, your kids might be wanting to benefit from this. And
Yeah,
so the
exactly.
legacy continues. And
And
it's
we need to,
important.
yeah, it's important and we need to carry on. And frankly, it's the only way to save education, full stop. It's what they're
Yes.
doing to kids in school is nothing less short of child abuse. Okay, 3 questions to finish it up.
Okay.
Sort of little bit of rapid fire. What's your education background and are you using it today in your capacity as
So I started at a private college learning biblical studies, and then I transitioned to USF and started studying communication. I fell in love with rhetoric and argument and debate, and then the professor that I was there with said that'll never pay the bills, and so I started studying mass communications and marketing. Started supplementing with my own kind of marketing background, and then I left and got 3 jobs because I couldn't find one that would pay the bills, and, eventually was miserable, but I really liked helping people, so I went back to college again for my master's in licensed mental health counseling because I thought,
Yeah,
"That's
I heard
I wanna
that.
help." Yeah.
Wow.
Then I got to the very end of that program, and I realized it's an insurance game in a lot of ways, and I didn't wanna play a game where I wanted to put butts in seats
Right.
just to keep the bills paid. I wanted to actually help people. So at the very end of that program, I walked away from it, um, all the way at the end. It didn't transfer into any other completable program at that time, and
I don't know, you're
I had
dealing with people in Tallahassee. That's mental health to a certain degree.
I need the therapy though.
Self-therapy. What is
Yeah.
what is some advice you would give to your
Yeah.
younger self?
Oh man. Um,
Don't study mental health.
maybe. Yeah. No, I think that, and I watch a lot of. I did this a lot as a young kid. I really grew up with a lack of security and personal confidence, and so I was a people pleaser, and I always tried to figure out what they needed or wanted and do good by them. And I think that I didn't become my own person until I realized that there's 7.6 billion people in the world and I can't be friends with all of them. And there's no real need to anyway. And I should find the way that I believe is right between me and God and walk it. And I wish I'd have got to that a little earlier. Yeah.
Very poignant. Okay, what's the most urgent cultural shift you see needed in the world today?
Hmm. I think this word has been on my mind a lot over the last couple of years, but it's the word abdicate.
Mm.
And the way that a king abdicates his throne and now he has no power. We as parents, we as individuals do this, but especially as parents have done this. We've abdicated our children to a school because they know better. We abdicate our nutrition to stores because that's what they have in stock. We abdicate shopping to just whatever can be shipped to me,
We
and
abdicate our health to our doctors.
there you go. In
Well, we're
subtle
trained,
ways,
right? We're trained to trust the expert. So I
constantly.
think that's the phenomenon that you're remarking on.
Correct. And I think it's time for that to hit a massive reset and for parents to go, you know what? It's my life and they're my kids. And on that, I'll stand. And that should be enough.
It's the name of my book. They're your
Plug it.
kids.
Plug it.
Well, I mean, you just said it twice,
Yeah.
actually. So,
No, I'm serious. Plug it.
um,
Give us a spiel for your book. I want to hear
yeah,
it.
no,
I haven't read that one.
people know my show, they know my book, but
Okay.
thank you. Jason Crawford, it's been a pleasure to have you on the show. Thank you so much
Pleasure's
for
mine.
joining me.
Thank you.
All right, so that does it for this episode of the Sam Sorbo Show. I hope you enjoyed that. Just remember, go out there and speak truth and speak it boldly. We'll see you next time.
The views and opinions expressed in the Sam Sorbo Show are those of the speakers and do not necessarily reflect the views and positions of the Herzog Foundation.